Look, I don't want to be called a marketing genius, but we finally decided to return to offering merchandise. Our first group of products, Noni Madueke themed. This is the ArsenalVision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yank Gunner. Yeah, we've got Noni mugs, we've got Noni shirts, we've got Noni hoodies. All your Noni gear is here. Come to our store. Oh, I've just been told our store's out of business. Yeah, look, it is a fascinating moment in Arsenal transfer history, the way people are reacting to the rumors of us being linked to a pretty talented and somewhat interesting 23-year-old player. Now, he's from Chelsea, so we know that plays a role. I am so excited to talk about this, not because I'm excited about the player, and I will give you my views on that, but mainly because I'm so excited to discuss the different angles from which you can analyze potentially adding Noni Madueke. We're also going to talk Christian Norgaard, who is now an Arsenal player. We're going to talk about Eberechi Eze, Rodrigo, who Xabi Alonso and Real Madrid hate so much that now I think I should hate him too. That's kind of where I'm at on that. We scouted Eze and Madueke yesterday. Love for you to check that out. Clive ran the rule over those players while I said things like, ooh, look at what Eze just did. So if you want that kind of content, you can have it. We have a transfer daily every single day. They get funnier and funnier as the days go by, and we'll have a special edition Friday night, Clive, tomorrow with a special celebrity guest joining us. So I'm very excited about that. It's all happening on Patreon. You can use code AVP50 and get 50% off your first month, and realize that more Clive, more Tim, more Paul, more Phil, and a tolerable volume of me is something you need in your life. But you know what you have in your life right now? You have Phil Costa. Hello, Phil Costa.
Hello, mate. How we doing?
You look swole, mate. What's going on?
Do I? Oh, thank you.
You look a bit swole.
It's a flattering colour on me, this green, so that's why I've worn it, basically.
You're going to sell more Arsenal kits that way, let me tell you.
Get the Phil merch, not the Noni merch.
I will tell you, though, if you've been following the Transfer Daily, you know that one of our regular names that we check on that is Mykonos Barber, who had all the insight on Sesko, and I would suggest maybe you're creeping up on time for a visit to Mykonos Barber. Would you agree with that?
I'm waiting. Look, it's an important weekend. I've got friends visiting this weekend, so I'm going to wait until Thursday. Next week, next Thursday, to get it fresh and marinated, ready.
This is the rookie move. Someone had to tell me this. You get the haircut the week before the time you want it to look perfect. So,
not if your barber's good, mate.
Oh, shots fired at my barber. And given what I spend on that person, I'm concerned. Okay, a man who has not visited a barber in a long, long time is also here. His name is Clive. Hello.
Yep, I felt a bit left out. Hello. But don't worry, you youngsters have your little chat amongst yourself.
Have you, did you used to go to the barber?
Yes, I did.
When you went to the barber, did you get the shave?
There's a barber in Luton called Lloydie's, famous man, bless him. And the queue was massive, mate. There wasn't that many barbers for sort of Caribbean people. And that was that's why I used to get me flat top in there. So there you go.
Oh, flat top. I love it. Kid and play. That's what I think of when I think of the flat top.
Now I'm going to be asked for pictures, aren't I?
You are. Yeah. Or I guess Will Smith had it too at one point, didn't he?
I'm not that ridiculous, but yeah, that similar style, right? So there you go.
Well, the less said, the better. Okay. Let's dive into something that's almost as ridiculous, and that's the reaction to the Noni Madueke leaks. We will talk. Look, Christian Norgaard is an Arsenal player. We need to talk about that, but it's again, similar to the Zubamendi thing, we've already covered it. And if you missed it, we did an episode with a Brentford expert. Mike from the Ealing Road podcast came on, and I think he spoke brilliantly. You can check out that episode if you haven't listened to it already. And if you haven't, you just lost 5 points of ArsenalVision podcast credibility. So, just something to think about. Clive, I want to dive into the analysis of the player. We will do that for sure. I just want to ask you, can you think of an Arsenal transfer, an attacking player, someone in this price range, anything like this, where the reaction has been so vociferous, and maybe I'm using, again, social media driving too much of my experience, but I'm also in WhatsApp chats. I talk to other human beings who aren't just faceless trolls on the internet. It seems like people are pretty upset about this. Have you been surprised by the reaction? I know you didn't love the links when they first came out, but this is as intense as I've seen it in a while.
Yeah, it's all about timing, isn't it? When you hear the news, and when the links first came out, I thought we were getting other players, and then you just got to piece it all together, really. And there's lots of strands to pick out here. Do you want me to do the Chelsea strand?
Yeah, And that would be a good place to start. I think it makes sense. Yeah. But to be fair, I think there were people that were against Kai Havertz, but I don't feel like they were against Kai Havertz to this degree.
Yeah, I think the Chelsea. I'll just stay with the Chelsea side of things because footballistically, you can build a case really easily for why we'd want to do this. So we'll no doubt come on to that. So I'll just start I'll stay with Chelsea for now. Chelsea is a sworn enemy, right? And we spent many years behind them, watching them win all of the trophies that we would have got if it wasn't for Roman Abramovich's money, right? So now we're in a situation where we no longer need to be begging and borrowing of Chelsea. We are seen as a superior team. You know, we're the team that's had more points over the last 3 years. We're in the Champions League more regularly. And we don't need to be knocking on their door. But we still keep knocking on their door. So you look at the history of knocking on their door. Just in the last few years, we can all talk about Willian. Even though he paid himself off, it was an expensive mistake up to a point. We can look at others, Peter Cech, playing in Europa League final and then 3 minutes later going back to work for Chelsea. Not great, because he 4 goals went in his net. Do you know what I mean? There are things there, looking at them, David Luiz, I think David Luiz was okay, and that's where we were at that time, But we've got the fresh memories of, Kai Havertz. Some people don't like him, don't like the fact that we paid the money we did for him. They always report the top-end price, never the breakdown, just a top-end price to hammer us. And then you had last year, we had Sterling. I was hopeful for Sterling, and he's come in, he can barely raise a gallop. And even though it was a bargain, it's sort of like we carried that weight. And then we get to the latter stage of the Champions League, we can barely use him. So people are frustrated. They see Chelsea getting 90-odd million quid in their bin for playing in a World Club Cup championship. And then they buy too many players. And what happens? We come along and reportedly offer them top dollar and profit on a player that they don't even really like. I sort of said to you, Elliot, the other day, we say he's a bit of a D-head, right? And I sort of said to you, hey, mate, to other teams, Ben White is a bit of a D-head, but actually he's our D-head. And my son, who's always smarter than me, he said, yeah, but Dad, he goes, we like Ben White. They don't even like Madueke. Do you see what I mean? And I thought, oh, damn it, he's done me again. And he's right? So he's right. And this is the issue. We see things around attitude, discipline, and then you think price, and I know the price is being stuffed in our faces, the top end, and people have seen other players that could potentially not come because of it. They're making those sums, and bingo, you have the perfect social media storm, right? Based on some information and incomplete information. And that's where we are.
Okay, let's take it out of the metaverse for a minute here. Now I'm going to get legal letters from Mark Zuckerberg. Great. But let's talk about the player specifically. Then I want to come back to the order of signings and how that sometimes influences reaction to them as well. By the way, Clive, if you keep invoking all the brilliant knowledge your son is giving you coming out of the pod, I'm going to have to add him to the contributor list. So just, you can tell me that up front.
I'm always on this one to learn things from.
put him in the show notes. Phil, let's talk about the player. And let's not talk about him as a Chelsea player. And let's not talk about his attitude and the fact that he once fought with Cole Palmer about taking a penalty or, said Wolverhampton was a shithole or any of that. Let's just talk about the player. This is a 6-foot-tall 23-year-old who has a top speed that at least has been measured as up there as the fastest in the league, who I think is a bit bandy-legged, you might say, right? The legs are all akimbo. They're going in all directions, but he still completes a decent percentage of his dribbles. He's a phenomenal ball carrier. He likes to get his shot off. You describe this player very direct, very big, very fast, 23 years old, and you think, and people reacting like this? So what is it about this player that people have such hesitations about? Because the physical tools are definitely there, but we just scouted him, and I have to admit, aesthetically, he looks like a player whose left leg and right leg haven't often met each other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you guys noted this on the scouting pod, but his mechanics are really awkward. I mean, he's very upright when he runs. He's quite gangly. He doesn't always look in control. But you can see how quick he is over the first 5 or 10 yards. And also, he's quick over longer distances as well, which is something we've lacked, I think. Some running power in behind, or some people who are willing to go beyond the last line of defense in transition. I mean, you mentioned the ball carrying. He's in the 95th percentile for progressive carries. He's in the 98th percentile for carries into the box. So this is a really high level player for those particular metrics. And they're big numbers, and actually they're Mohamed Salah numbers, in that he isn't always the smoothest dribbler, but he is direct, he is penetrative, and he always finds himself in the penalty area to create danger or even shooting opportunities for himself. And why does that help us? Because those qualities are major factors in helping break down low blocks, which we have struggled with over the past 2 seasons. So I think that's an instant kind of draw that maybe Arteta or the scouting team or the coaching staff will have taken towards Madueke, because he's very direct. He doesn't really care when he loses the ball because he just keeps going. So that's immediately what stands out with Madueke to me anyway, that he can get into the box. He does it a lot. He does it quickly. And also I like where he's taking shots from. And I think that's come on a lot over the last 2 seasons. He was taking some really bad shots from distance on his wrong side over, when he first joined Chelsea, but now he's in that nice little quadrant of the corner, again, where Mohamed Salah takes those shots. And I think that could be useful for Arsenal because we've got someone else who likes to do that as well, by the name of Bukayo Saka. So I don't think he's near the level of Bukayo Saka, but I'm just saying there are things there that are analogous to the player, which we can maybe or bring us towards an understanding of why we're looking at him.
Get ready for our next Instagram reel. Phil compares Madueke to Mohamed Salah. Clive, you want to add on to?
I had this last time.
You want to add on to Phil's excellent description of Noni Madueke as Mohamed Salah Mark II?
Yep, I think I don't quite agree. No, I'm joking. I think,
Distance.
So let's have it's a football conversation, isn't it? It is. And where is football going? Right. So what do teams do? They all narrow up and they mid-block here, 3 lines. Bosh. Low block, there you go. That's it. Everyone's doing the same thing. Why do you do it? Because you don't reveal your key part of the goal, and you save your energies when you transition. So everyone's doing the same thing. So what you need on the edges are crazy dog fools that can challenge people, want to be relentless. We had a discussion this week about Gyökeres, and it's quite easy to see his relentless nature of always going and going and going. To find energy in a transfer is really hard. So everyone can play. We've got different techniques, different profiles, etc., etc. When you see people with boundless energy, that is a really valuable thing. I looked at Madueke and I looked at his size 14 feet, pointing outwards, trying to trap the ball. One time he traps it, one time he doesn't trap it, but next minute he's going back again, he's going back again, he's going back again. And that relentless energy equates to something called threat. And we need to threaten backlines a lot more. We need to threaten blocks a lot more through more than one player. That's the key thing. Now, I just saw a beautiful article in the Athletic this morning, but it's in my mindset anyway. We played 58 games last year. Real Madrid are, I think, on game 69. They're still playing last season while some teams are flying away for pre-season. The game is relentless. We played 58 games. We knocked out the FA Cup in the 3rd round, so we could easily top 60 games. I know we love Bukayo Saka, but he's not playing 60 games, right? He's not doing, neither is Martinelli. Bukayo Saka last year played 20 games in the Premier League, right? So we have to think differently about how we approach this season, because last time I looked at my timeline, there's anybody on there who doesn't want us to be in the latter stages of every competition. No one's prepared to give up the League Cup or the FA Cup. We want to win that. We didn't win a trophy. People say you've got to win the Champions League, you're going to manage to lose his job, and we never even won it. I think we've been to 3 semi-finals. As for Premier League, not won that since I did have a flat top. And basically, we've got to win that as well next season. So how are we going to do it? No, seriously, how are we going to do it unless we add to the group? And we add to the group profiles of players that can do the things that we do, particularly in wide areas, the way we build up. Multiple profiles that bring different skill sets to the group. We need 4 proper wide players. That's what we got. That's the minimum for me. And so that's how we're going to get to latter stage. That's how we're going to protect people from operations. We got 2 of our forwards that we rely on the back of operations. Now I've moaned about this. So when we come up with a player that can solve some of those solutions, I'm not going to moan yet. Let's see what the final pie looks like. I'm not going to moan yet. I'm not promoting this player, but I'm promoting what he can be and what he does for us. If he allows Bukayo Saka to stay healthy, and if he allows Ethan to be an interior, I am all for it. If we have a situation where we're late in the game and we're one goal up and we need to have a transition ability, I am all for it. If we're playing a team where we got a big Champions League game at the weekend and we want to rest Bukayo Saka because we want to beat that team, I'm all for it. You know, it's a much bigger issue. The football is changing and we have to change our thought process. We've done the Chelsea angle. We haven't done the cost angle yet, Elliot. I know that is also an issue, and it is an issue. It does shape people's opinions. I'm much more comfortable talking about football because I can see it. And we are sorry, mate. One last thing. I'm not watching it, but I've seen highlights of PSG. When we did see them last year, how are they playing? What do they have in forward areas? Multiple wing forwards. Right? So again, what Man City added? Multiple creators and carriers. We have to embrace this because this is where the game tactically is taking us towards.
Yeah. By the way, I still think we played PSG really well.
Oh, brilliantly well.
Throw that out there with everything we were missing, and you see how good they are because they're really, really good. They absolutely dismantled Real Madrid, and we'll get onto that when we talk Rodrigo down the line. But we're going to stick with the big Madueke debate. A couple of data points I should mention, by the way. Yes, his data is good. He had 2,000 minutes this season in the league and 1,000 minutes before that. This is still relatively small sample size. And 2 seasons ago, half his appearances were essentially as a sub. This season, 5 of the 27, I think, starts or so were, five of his 32 appearances were subs, right? And the other 27 were starts. So there's some sub effects in there. There's some beating up on lower opposition. And I know what people are going to say. Well, we need to beat up on lower opposition. Not dismissing it, not remotely. Some people would say, well, Gyökeres beats up on lower opposition. Yes, Madueke did it to the tune of 5 goals against Wolves and Southampton. Gyökeres does it to the tune of 50 goals against that lower opposition. Madueke had 7 goals. 5 of them were Wolves and Southampton. That doesn't dismiss that he did it. It's just a data point worth bearing in mind. You see long barren spells throughout the season where he didn't contribute as much. I think an interesting aspect of this, Phil, is what role he would actually play, because there is no world where I think this is the right transfer for a backup to Saka. No world at all. It's too much money. It's not something you need to do. When you look at the teams that win shit, their best players just play all the time, and they don't have 50 million pound backups sitting behind them. If I said, who's Mohamed Salah's backup, you couldn't name him because he plays on average 2 Premier League games a season. You know, now you could say, oh, is it Diaz or is it, who is it? Who is it really? Nunez, I don't know. The point is, you don't spend huge on that. But I do agree with Clive that you need a group, probably 4, more likely 5, really good high-end forwards. And so if it's Gyökeres, Kai, Saka, Martinelli, let's say Leo goes. Gyökeres, Kai, Saka, Martinelli. If that 5th guy is Noni Madueke instead of Eze or Rodrigo, I think that fundamentally is where the frustration's coming in. So I want to ask you about him as a left wing option, if he is literally the buy instead of an Eze or Rodrigo. And I think that is where people start to get really worried, because if we had Eze and Gyökeres in and he was in after them, I think there'd be a little bit less or a lot less animated response to it. So we know he can play off the right. That's principally what he's done. When we looked at the scouting video, he played off the left a decent amount. He played off both flanks. We haven't used a left footer off the left. That's been a thing Mikel has really resisted doing. At times on this pod, we've said, why can't Martinelli and Saka switch sometimes? Change it up. Let Saka drive to the byline off his left. Let Martinelli go to his strong foot, to the byline. Like, we haven't really wanted to use a left footer off the left. So it seems weird all of a sudden that we'd now decide to do that with this player. Do you think he is a true left wing option for us who could be coming in to sort of take a place from Martinelli and or Leo, or do you still see this principally as a right wing depth move?
I think it's a depth move. I think he's coming in because he can play both sides. And even only until recently was he only being played on the left. I think it was the last 10 or 11 games of Chelsea's season last year where he was playing on the left. So for me, I don't really agree with your Saka point, because, he can play every game as long as he's fit. But what if he isn't? You know, we lost him for 3 months last year, and I think the whole point was that we had nobody in reserve. And also...
Can I have two answers to that, just super quick?
Yes.
I want to let you continue
Yes.
your point. But answer number one is, I think whoever we buy, if Bukayo Saka misses another 3 months, we don't win anything next season. Don't fool yourself. If your best player's out, you don't win stuff. It doesn't matter if you have Noni Madueke. You don't win the title playing Noni Madueke over Saka. My other point I wanted to say to that quickly is, I think there's a chance, and I know Ethan Nwaneri is looked at as an 8-10 option. That's where his future is, and I'll let Clive speak on that in a moment. But if you said to me right now, there's going to be 8 Premier League games Saka doesn't play, and you can give those games to Noni Madueke, or you can give them to Ethan and see if he goes supernova, and if he doesn't, you have to move one of your left-wing options over. I still think I'd rather see if Ethan becomes the star we know is in there. So those were my 2 quick answers to you about what if Saka misses time, but please carry on with your point that I've rudely interrupted. I apologize.
Not at all. And I would be absolutely fine giving them to Ethan, but I don't think that's the plan. Because A, we're looking to sign Madueke, and B, all the talk has been about him moving centrally. So I just think we need a stronger group. We haven't had we had Nathan Butler-Oyedeji, Kieran Tierney, Ismail Kabir on the bench last year, you know, with Raheem Sterling coming off the bench. We need to strengthen in some way. And I'm not saying this player should be Madueke, by the way, because even though I like him, I wouldn't spend the reported £50 million on him, whether that's wrongly reported or there are add-ons involved or anything like that, I don't know. But the number we're being drip-fed is £50 million. And even then, I'm a bit like, would I do that? But I can see the logic of him coming in because he can play on the right, he can play on the left, and also it's more about his style and what he brings to the team. I mean, also with Saka, do we want him playing 90 minutes every week? You know, it's not just about the starts. It's about how much of the game he's able to influence. Could it be an hour? Could it be, 70 minutes? And then we have another fresh option to bring off the bench. When you're playing every 3 or 4 days, that could mean something towards April or May when it's crunch time, and we think, oh, I'm glad we had Madueke to take, who knows, 500 minutes off Saka during that first half of the season. It could add up. It could mean something. So I don't think if we sign Madueke, he's coming to be Saka backup. I just think he's coming to be part of the group. And let's be honest, none of us are entirely convinced about Martinelli or Trossard, because if an offer comes in, I think we'd all sell them if the number was right. So could he be an option on the left? I think he's certainly different. I mean, you even saw in the scouting pod that he was quite happy to go to the byline. He's very quick over those short distances. He can hang one up to the back post. But he can also do the Saka style of cross where he just gets it, floats it in onto the penalty spot. So I see flaws in this player. I really, really do. And he wouldn't be my first choice by any means, because there's a whole world out there. And the fact that we've gone back to Chelsea is just a bit boring and uninspiring. But the club have obviously seen something in him. And I think, Clive was absolutely right to mention the Chelsea factor. You mentioned the timing, because even though we've done a lot of good stuff already, we're all ready to be wowed by some big money signing who are taking us to the promised land, Gyökeres, Rodrigo, Eze, and Madueke is a bit of a reality check, right? And he brings us straight back down to earth in an obvious way, and we don't like that. So I think that is another narrative that's gone into the deal. And, I don't see him coming to be a backup. I think if he's good enough, if he's training hard enough, he will play. If he's not, if there are other people in better form, he won't play. So it's a squad game, and we need to rewire our brains a little bit, because it's not a starting 11 sport anymore. We have to future prove ourselves beyond that.
No one disagrees with that, by the way. I think it's opportunity cost, right? It's what could we do instead of this, and is this the thing to do instead of the other options? I have seen reporting that said, for Chelsea to do this, the fee has to start with a 5. And I'm completely fine with that. You give them $5 million and it's done. Look,
plus 45 in add-ons.
Starts with a 5. Starts with a 5. You can't argue with the logic. Clive, you want to enlarge Phil's brilliant points there that will be widely agreed with?
I sat here for 3 years talking about this. We got to move away from first 11s. What do we end up doing? Talking about first 11s, because we haven't got enough players. Right, so now we're trying to add to players. We may buy 7 players this window, and everyone's got the ump. My goodness, mate. Let's have a bet. We would have done that before. At season's end, we wouldn't have done. And I know you made a point there earlier about travelling down the left-hand side as a lefty.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't really done that before.
No.
But we haven't really had a centre forward before that might be in the box, that wants people to cross with their strong foot on the outside and not just telegraph inverted crosses, to false nine types. Do you know what I mean? We're going to have somebody that's going to be spinning to that near post to tap it in or across the 6-yard box. And so everything changes, right? And that's what we're trying to do, aren't we? We're trying to evolve offensively. And so, yes, we don't want to move Saka away from his absolute killer best side where he's one of the best in the world. No, we want to keep him there. But maybe we get a left footer from the other side and you can get what you want at it, which is a byline winger that gets and cuts back crosses to our big 6-foot number 8s. Do you see what I mean? Or centre forward. So we're opening up tactical options. And I'm just looking at it logically, football-wise. I don't think you can dismiss it. If we take our, we be a bit more mature and adult about it, you can't look at this player and dismiss him. He is an England international. He's known to the league. I like Rafa Leao, for example. I don't know anything about him really, apart from YouTube. I don't know if he tracks back. Everything I look at, he's walking around, mate. He must be in the walking world championships. I like him. Do you know what I mean? I really like him. I like Bakayoko. I saw him once against us for PSV, and he ripped Kiwior a new one. I don't know what his form is like recently. The price was 17 million. It doesn't say to me that's Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? Even Rodrigo. I like Rodrigo. I've watched him. He looks crushed at the moment mentally. Why am I going to say, well, I know what he's going to do? I don't know. Madueke, I see something there. I know he's known to the league. Last time I looked, the words win now is all over the club. So you're managing risk, aren't you? You're managing risk of the players that you have, their health, 2 operations in our front 6, by the way, their health, 3, sorry, because we've got an ACL as well, right? So we're like snooting our nose up, adding to the group. We're adding to the group. Now, if this is the group, then the pitchforks come out, didn't they, Elliot? And then we can have a chat.
That's true.
But this is not the group, by everything that we've read. And your favourite player could be coming in, and suddenly it opens up another tactical option, and we're feeling different. A centre forward lands, we're feeling different. Now, potentially someone goes, we can have a 4th player. So I'm all right with it. The bit that concerns me a little bit, if I'm honest with you, is that I want to see us drive a hard bargain. Do you know what I mean? That's what I want to see us do. It feels like sometimes, and it's only reports, we sort of buckle to Chelsea. And we don't need to buckle to them. And we don't, not anymore. There was a time when they had all the money and they were like superior, the best team in the world, basically. Not anymore. We don't need to buckle to them. We're fighting for every 2.
Sell. They have to sell or they can't register new players in the UEFA competitions.
Exactly. So when you read things, and we don't know if it's true, when you read things and our first offer's right up there, thinking, hold on a minute, lads, come on, lads. But we don't know, do we? We really don't know. It's just, we've been drip-fed this and it's driving us to distraction. For me, just got to be really, really careful until we see what it actually looks like, because I don't want to, other people are going to have their reaction. Fine. And I had mine, Elliot, didn't I? When it first kicked off, it was a laughing reaction. But, but when you think about it football-wise, I can see it. I can't deny.
Well, it was on Friday Night Clive. You had this on Sarah in hand. That you're going to get different analysis. And a few things, because with Chelsea, I think we should point out Chelsea have been disciplined by UEFA, and the way the discipline works, and the publicly available information is opaque a little bit. So all the accountants listening, and I know there are many of you, and we do love you and thank you for your service. They must have from their A list of players submitted with UEFA last season, they must have a net profit on the sale of the elimination of cost in the A list versus what they bring in. In other words, if they bring in more cost than they move out, they cannot register those players for the Champions League this season. So why are we going to get our feet held to the fire by a club that desperately must clear wages and players? Or they can't register Jamie Gittins. They can't register João Pedro. Literally, those players will not play in the Champions League if Chelsea don't move some players out. I would sit there with my arms folded and say it's 30 plus 10. You decide. Because I don't see anyone else banging down their door for Noni Madueke. Now,
there's no rush from our side because he's going to have his holidays now anyway.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't regard the addition of Noni Madueke as a must-be ready for the start of the season kind of addition. Gyökeres is that kind of addition. if we're going to replace Martinelli with a Rodrigo or an Eze, they got to be in a little sooner because we got to integrate them. Or if we're going to replace Leandro Trossard, if Noni Madueke is truly a depth option and a luxury depth option, fine by me, but negotiate. I don't care if that happens late August. And I will say, look, do we need a bigger squad? Of course. I know people say that. But when I look at the teams that I think are really good, I don't see 7 forwards. I see 4 really good ones or 5 really good ones at most. I hate to invoke PSG.
6 forwards. You need 6 forwards.
You need 6.
Yeah.
You need 6. But the teams that win stuff don't play 6 forwards. They just don't. Not with real minutes. Liverpool played 4 forwards with any real number of minutes. Real minutes. And I think... like PSG, it's Barcola, Kvara, Doué, and Dembele. Beyond that, they don't really trust or rate the guys they have. They don't need
Ramos.
to.
They have 5
They have
forwards,
Ramos.
right?
They have
5 forwards in a league where they're jogging around. We're not jogging around.
I think you need 6, Clive. I absolutely agree you need 6.
Yeah.
But, I think, for example, if you said Ethan is number 6, I think that's a hell of a number 6. And again, please, let's not reopen it. I get it. That's not the position he's seen as going forward. But where I'm going with this is, if you tell me it's Martinelli, Eze, Kai, Gyökeres, and Saka, that's a hell of a group. And if you want Ethan to be the other one who can play some wing minutes, I'm totally fine with it. If you say we need one more in that group, it can't be Ethan, that's not his role. Do we need to spend 50 million from Chelsea on Nani? If it's 30 plus 10, then it starts to be a thing that you say, wow, we've really increased. And this is where I think people are going to judge. If it is Eze plus Gyökeres plus Nani, I think it's very, very hard to argue that we haven't done good business. If it is Rodrigo plus Gyökeres plus Nani, again, very hard to argue. If it's Gyökeres and Nani, I think people are going to feel we have not gone to the quality that was available in the market. And I will further say, I think this is where people have had their heads turned. There was that beautiful shining moment on the hill this summer when we were linked with Eze plus Rodrigo. And now it's Eze plus Nani or Rodrigo plus Nani. And I realize that's not as exciting. If you really believed it was going to be Eze plus Rodrigo, you may be overinvested in transfer window hype. You know what I'm saying? I don't think Arsenal were ever going to do that plus a striker. But there is a slightly less comfortable conversation to be had here, Phil, but I think it's one worth picking up on, and it's about Mikel Arteta. I want to ask you 2 questions about Mikel, and I don't want to ask them in a loaded way, but I think they should be asked. One, it is reported, really driving the ship on this signing. And 2, I think this is a troubled player that has some issues that we've seen and we've discussed technically and in terms of his capabilities. Is this Mikel potentially having slightly too much power consolidated in himself at the club where he can say, I want this 50 million pound guy at Chelsea and there isn't a pushback? And 2, is he doing what all good coaches do? Overrating his own coaching ability, the I can fix him thing, right? I can turn this guy into, we've had some reporting, he thinks he can make him a top left winger. So can you just address those 2 questions? And Clive, I'll come back to you on this as well. Is this a bit of an over-consolidation of power in the manager? Is this just what happens with every manager? And is he putting a lot of faith in his own coaching ability, which is sometimes a trap coaches can fall into?
I think every manager will have players that they like and think they can get a tune out of. But if you think he genuinely has too much power at the club, then why do we employ other people? What is the point of having a sporting director? What is the point of having a scouting team, a recruitment team? What is the point of having any of these guys at the club if Arteta is just going to go, yes, I want him and let's get him? There will obviously have been thousands of pages of PDFs, of stats, deep dives, of positional information, of his background. They will, as soon as Arteta says, I want that player, there are thousands of different things to consider. And I'm sure all the various teams at the club, whether you're a tangible number guy or a people guy, you will have done your research. And for me, that's just a crazy statement, because I'm sure that Arteta does have some influence at the club because he's the manager, so he's well within his rights to recommend players, to want players, to identify players. But then it doesn't mean that every time he does it, they're just going to say, yes, sir. There's no great rush to appease the great Arteta. He's just there doing his job and finding players that he likes. So would Madueke be a player that I identified? No, but they've obviously seen something in him collectively as a group that feels worthy of spending however however much we want to spend, whether that's 30, 40, 50. I don't know where we're going to end up. It sounds like towards the higher bracket of the deal, but it's just I can't get behind the idea that he's got too much power at the club, because he should have power. But also I trust the people around him enough to say, maybe I don't have total and entire belief in this player, but there is a sneaky suspicion of mine that they're almost going signing for signing, because obviously Berta might have been pushing for Gyökeres, and then Arteta might have been pushing for Madueke, and they said, well, let's meet in the middle and see what happens. We get one each, and we'll see at the end of the year. So
we'll see who the fans hate most.
Yeah, exactly. It's your head on the spike, mate. So that's how I see it. I don't think he's this overruling sovereign figure at the club. I just think he holds an influence, and it's up to the people around him to say yes or no, or we agree or we don't agree, and judge those pros and cons together. I hope so anyway. If there's anything else happening, I'd be a little bit worried, but I don't believe that. So
I think a successful club is one where the manager wields a tremendous amount of influence, especially over footballing decisions like which players to bring in, but where there is a collaborative process that involves people who he trusts and respects enough to listen to them. We know that's clearly happening here, because I don't think Mikel Arteta's first choice, as you rightly point out, is Viktor Gyökeres. So I think it is a case of Andrea Berta has had influence over Mikel, and they've collaborated, and they've reached a decision on something that can get done in the time frame they want, on a player that probably wasn't Mikel's first option. And this may be a case of Mikel saying, I like this player, here's the vision I see for him. The team have run the data. We do know that a lot of very data literate people seem to really like Noni Madueke, that there are some things out there that suggest he's undervalued. Not at price, I mean undervalued, but underappreciated in popular perception. And so I don't think the process is breaking down here. You know what I mean?
I do think he has a I want to save them kind of mentality to his coaching, but he's a coach, and Clive will know about this. You want to fix people, and if you see talent, anyone. Yeah, that's it. So I think
Clive still wants us to sign Mudryk.
So did you?
That's a great example.
I never.
Yes,
I did that.
I remember
yes, you did.
Podcast late. Yeah,
but that's a great example. It's a great example of somebody I watched. That player, Sesko and Gyökeres, are probably the most YouTube clips I've ever watched in my life. And I got to a point where I can't wait to get this player in Mudryk. What a good player he'll be. But at that time, it was 30-something. And then it went up, and it went up, and it went up, and then in the end, it's like, oh my God, what's happening here, right? So, and Chelsea jumped in, right? So, I'm going back to where you started, Elliot. I want Mikel Arteta to have influence, because what I don't want is people saying, well, did Arteta buy that player even when we lose a game? That's far worse. I want him to have influence, because I want him to have total influence and get all the players that he wants. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, we can all say, well, actually, this is why. So for me, I want the influence. This is why I feel a little bit embarrassed, actually, because if we ever saw the data they probably got on this player, it'll probably shock us. They'll probably metrics that we can't even imagine. The publicly available stuff that we see is great in the world, but I would love to see what they see. Honestly, I bet it's like out there, something crazy. It would just be amazing. You don't make these decisions just to upset people. You don't make decisions. I honestly think, I can remember seeing, I'm going to bring his name up now, right? Just because things change when you see people. I remember when, obviously, Lamine Yamal came into fruition at Barcelona, and they had Rafinha. I thought, what are they going to do with Rafinha? They're moving to the left-hand side, and look what happened. He's right near the Ballon d'Or. He's a flyaway runner with a left-foot crushing shot. What if we do something like that with Madueke? What if we turn him into something like that? Straight lines on your strong foot. Suddenly you look different, don't look as awkward. It becomes an option with something we don't have today. We literally don't have it. We can't play Ethan out there. That's not him. He's a small space, really tidy feet player with a shot, primarily from the right-hand side of the pitch. That's what I've seen so far. He can cross from the inside channels on the left 8, but I don't think that's what he's going to be. And so we need that, right? So we need to mature that. So I'm open to that evolution. I really am. We talked about processes here where we don't have no visibility of them. We're just taking reports and saying, Gyökeres is Berta's guy, and it may have a hint of truth in it. You know, I think what we can say, based on really good reporting, is that they bring a lot of players to the table and then decide which direction they're going to go. You know, and I think that's a group effort thing, and that's what I want to believe, that it's a team for the data people, scouting people do background checks, etc., and they come to their position, and then they take it up to the board and they decide if it's worth to spend. We sat here and we didn't go for the 65 million for Ollie Watkins in January. That tells me we've got robust processes in the club that say that wasn't a good value proposition at that time. We didn't like it because we wanted our striker, but we know there are processes in place. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it right now on this date. Let's see what we end up with. You know, that's the key in this. What are we going to end up with?
I think there's a question of whether fan sentiment should matter. Should it matter that fans really want Eze and would love it, and a lot of fans really don't want Madueke and would really hate it? And I'll level with you, I don't think fan sentiment should matter. And the reason is fan sentiment lasts as long as the first good performance in the Arsenal shirt. That's how long it lasts. When he scores the winner at Old Trafford on the opening day and runs off to celebrate with the away fans, he's one of us from that moment. And I'll give you the perfect example. I remember when we were linked with Aaron Ramsdale and people were outraged. We weren't very good at that time. Now we're trying to buy a keeper from a relegated team, a twice relegated keeper. What are we doing? Hate this move. This club doesn't know what it's doing. Everybody's an idiot. 6 months later, he's a fan favorite, and such a fan favorite that then when we decide to upgrade on him, people are outraged that we're pushing him out of the club. So fan sentiment is important because we are the club, but it's so malleable and changeable over such a short period of time that I don't think it should matter, obviously, in the decision the club makes. Because here's the funny thing. We could sign Eze, and 2 stinkers into his season, people are going to be going, we passed up on Rodrigo for this. What were we thinking? So, I love that we're passionate because that's how football matters. But I don't think that what we think should drive the decision-making, as long as the process looks good. And I'll level with you, whatever I think of the player, and I have been clear, this isn't a player I would go for, and this isn't necessarily a deal I like, but he's a 23-year-old with tremendous physical tools, and aesthetically he's not great, and there's some questions about some behavioral stuff. He's a little out there in terms of social media behavior and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, he's a tremendously physically talented 23-year-old that's played at the top level of the Premier League. If the price is right, that's a player you have to at least give the club a chance to go get and see how it works out. We got to talk about a lot of other stuff. We got to talk about Eze and Rodrygo and Gabriel Heinze joining the coaching ranks, and we have to talk about Norgaard, who we actually signed and announced, and all of that pales in significance to telling you how to run an e-commerce business. Because if I don't do that, what if you run the wrong e-commerce business? What if you run a bad e-commerce business? And then on my deathbed, I'll be there and going, people failed at e-commerce because I didn't tell them about Shopify. My last breath on this earth. Well, you know what? That's not going to be my last breath on this earth, because I am going to tell you about Shopify, damn it. It's the e-commerce site that lets you sell on Instagram, sell on Facebook, sell on TikTok. Lets you have the cart management taken care of so that when someone has something in their cart but they haven't checked out, it says things like, hey, you left this in your cart. Would you like to buy it? And when you sell it, you don't have to worry about the taxes, and you don't have to worry about the shipping. And you don't have to worry about writing a single line of code. If you can decide what pictures to upload and what descriptions to write, Shopify can literally even find you the products to sell. It can do it all. It can help you with your supply chain. Business term. It can do all of that and give you the analytics to understand how your business is performing, but most importantly, lets you focus on what you're good at, and it focuses on the e-commerce. And so on your dying bed, on your deathbed, you'll go, my life was a success because of Shopify. See how we turned that around? The story became a happy story of you dying a successful e-commerce titan of industry. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Start selling on Shopify today. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. What? Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Phil, I hope your next ad read on the Football Vision pod is just like that, my friend.
All that reminded me of was that Benzema tweet. when it was like, to Elliot's followers, he passed away last night and his last word was Shopify. Make of that what you will.
This is his wife, Babs.
Yeah.
Okay. Clive, can I ask you just a super quick question that I don't want to go deep on, because we
super quick question. That doesn't mean you're
well,
going to get a super
we just
quick answer.
because we don't have a ton of time to spend on things that aren't transfer related. It is July, but for the record. But Gabriel Heinze, you have any quick thoughts on that? I have to admit, this is an appointment that makes total sense because he was a mentor to Arteta and he's a huge close friend of Arteta. But in terms of the dynamic in the group, it's a big shift. He is a madman. Just watch the YouTube comps of him going nuts on the touchline. There are reports at Atlanta United that he trained the players to death in violation of their collectively bargained agreement on training. You're losing a Carlos Cuesta who was the players' coach, the conduit for transmitting Arteta's message to the players in a way that they could hear. And now you're getting a guy who's completely nuts. But who Arteta trusts and really has a close relationship with. So do you have any quick thoughts on Cuesta out, Heinze in, and how that might change the dynamic in the group?
Yeah, I think Cuesta started off as an individual coach, didn't he, at Arsenal? He's only about 27 when he was doing that. No surprise. You can't be holding groups.
He started
that
out,
age.
he learned to read, and he was a coach. Those are the two things he had to do when he was 7 years old.
And as Steve Brown moved on, he went probably more into sort of group training, I'm guessing, and so he just developed. You don't get to the to be a manager of a Serie A club just by being an individual coach and a nice speaker, right? So he's obviously developed under Arteta's wing. So I think, I do find it interesting, Elliot. We're going back to your earlier question about Arteta having too much authority. It's quite interesting. The two of the main people that's come in Berta and Heinze. Well, they are not little flowers, are they? They are super intense workaholic machines that want to win. He's almost surrounding himself with people like him. So if you want a nice, easy life, you keep the nice people, right? You keep them around. You just everyone says yes, 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 yes. He is almost like he wants to challenge. He doesn't want to be the cleverest person in the room. He wants a challenge. If you want to get better, that's exactly what you want. How are you going to learn? How are you going to develop? Right? Who's going to develop him? Edu's moved away. I think that relationship, maybe it's already out of date. Berta's come in, more wisdom. Heinz has come in, he's older, more wisdom. I think it's good. That's how you learn. That's how you develop, right? The players now, the most important thing, relationship to the players, not relationship to me. Relationship to the players, maybe the relationship to Howard Webb. It's probably going to be quite important. But I'm glad we're bringing in experience. We're trying to win this stuff, right? We're trying to win. By doing the same stuff, hasn't quite got us there. I'm not saying I'm blaming the people that have left, but it hasn't quite got us there. So we're trying to win. So what do? You have your lessons learned meeting and you change things and you try to get better. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Phil, do you want to go quick on that? Because like I said, I don't think it needs to be discussed much, in part because I just don't think we have enough visibility to these kinds of things to speak to it accurately. It's like injuries for me. One of those things that if you go too deep talking about it, you're well out of your depth in terms of what information is even available to you. But do you have quick thoughts on Heinze? I would just point anyone to read up on some of the funny track record he had in MLS, because it's not the best reading, but it also could mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know too much about him. I know that he had a very impressive playing career. He did manage as well for a few teams. And actually, despite his kind of spiky, aggressive exterior, he was actually quite an ambitious coach, quite an attack-minded coach. He compared his football to Marcelo Bielsa, or he took a lot of inspiration from Marcelo Bielsa, obviously not to the same effect. We all know that it was a pretty disastrous time at Atlanta United, was it? Where he was kind of sacked very quickly after 8 defeats in a row or something silly. But, I think he's a personable guy, but a very driven and committed person, which I think is what Arteta is, quite intense, wants to achieve their goals. He's very keen on discipline and culture and how you hold yourself and stuff like that. So I think a lot of those views align with Arteta and what he wants, but also I don't think there's any issue of him not wanting to disagree or argue with him. I think he'll want to get his point across where he wants to. So I think it's good. Change is important in football. Whether it's your playing staff or your coaching staff or whoever, sporting directors, CEOs, it could be anyone. But I just think fresh perspectives and motivations can really help a group. And considering where we've ended up in the last few years, just falling short, maybe this is just another thing to kind of consider when it comes to the mental side of things, because tactically and physically, I really think we're close, but maybe just an added perspective somewhere could make a difference.
Okay, that's enough of that. Let's talk transfers again.
Transfer.
Gosh, even I barely could get through that segment.
I thought it was great.
No, I honestly didn't hear any of it. All I heard was Eze Rodrigo. So let's talk about Norgaard. Phil, I'll stay with you just for a second. We've rebuilt our entire midfield in one window. Partey and Jorginho out, Norgaard and Zubimendi in. I can't decide if I think Norgaard is just the safety option to have an experienced leader in the dressing room who plays on the rare occasion he's needed, or if he can give more than that. Because candidly, to listen to Mike from the Ealing Road podcast talk about it, this is one of their most important players in a very good Premier League side, and he has a lot of good football left in him, according to them. Is this a guy who's going to play the 700 Jorginho minutes, or could we maybe be underestimating just how valuable he could be to us?
I think he's coming in to do the Jorginho thing. What Jorginho did for us 2.5 years ago, he's coming in to be that guy. You know, I really don't think there's a need to overthink this deal. I think Arsenal can bolster their midfield depth with a proven Premier League player for relatively little spend. I think Brentford had a chance to get a decent fee for a player. They could send him off after 6 good years of service. The player himself earns a good opportunity to play at a higher level and win things that wouldn't have been available before. I think it's fine. He's very combative. He's very aggressive. He leads by example. I know Thomas Frank spoke of him very highly in terms of how he manages himself and others around him on the pitch and off the pitch, which I think Arteta will appreciate. And also, there was a big void to fill when we lost Jorginho and Partey. That is a lot of experience, a lot of know-how to lose, right? And I think obviously the argument is, can we go younger? Can we bring in someone who's a bit younger that can develop and maybe hold a resale value moving forward? But I think this is absolutely perfect. He's still 31, so that's three potential years left in him at Arsenal, maybe even more if he's like Fernandinho levels of successful. But look at his defensive numbers. They're outstanding. Look at his physical metrics. They're always in the top 10, top 20 in the league. So he's still got lots to do, lots to play for. I think he'll play more than 700 minutes than, basically what Jorginho offered us last year. I'm happy. No fuss. 2 players out, 2 players in. Job done. I really don't have anything else to say about it. It's just very sensible. We really don't need to overanalyze it, is my opinion.
I'm sort of the same opinion, except football is weird. And I think Zubimendi's a wonderful player, but he's coming into a new league, new physical demands, getting used to that extra half yard that's not there anymore. You saw Marino struggle with it. Marino's a dual monster who came into the Premier League and suddenly everything was a half yard closer to him, and he looked slow at first, and I think he picked up the tempo, ironically, once he started to play as a striker, and then you saw that he started to come to terms with the tempo of the Premier League. But I don't think it's outrageous to believe that Norgaard might be a very important player at the start of the season to help Zubimendi integrate without all the pressure of playing every game at Premier League tempo right away. Especially, are you going to put Zubimendi into the cauldron of Old Trafford? I mean, United stink, I get it, but opening day,
why not?
Christian Norgaard has gone into Old Trafford and won games there. I'm saying that as a presumption. I don't know if Brentford won there, but I just assume because everybody has in the last couple of seasons.
Everybody's won there.
Right, yeah. So I'm probably safe. But you know what I mean? So Clive, do you think that there is a possibility that, maybe it's opening day, maybe it's not, but the point that a guy who's been to these stadiums and won in these stadiums and knows what the tempo is like might be a really useful guy to have, so that Zubimendi doesn't feel like he has to step in and immediately be one of the best central midfielders in the Premier League from day one, or is he just good enough that he'll do that? And I'm overthinking it.
I think it's just an easy signing. I think it's a very smart signing. Obviously the data on him is really good. As soon as you get presented with the name, you think, oh, it's actually quite good. His interceptions and tackles, he's right up there. And I think we have a lot of Brentford in our style, funny enough. Jamie Carragher sort of said the Arsenal turning into Stoke. Mate, just say Brentford. That's how we focus on set pieces, our goalkeeper delivery into wide areas, into a striker over the top of the press. That nearly got us to the Champions League final, by the way, by beating the PSG press. And so we have a lot of Brentford about us in our play style, and I think they're a fantastic club, what they've achieved. And so he just steps in there and does that job. I think we have this young player that's come in with one of the best number sixes in the world. Every time you see him on the international stage, he looks absolutely fantastic. Well, not every game in the Premier League is like the international stage. And some games may not suit him for the full 90. And so you have somebody to come in and Rob holding it late in the game. We drew 14 games. I don't know how many last season. I don't know how many from when we were leading, and probably 7 or 8, I believe, top of my head. We need to fix that, don't we? So how do you fix that? You have the Rob Holding type player in the middle of the pitch that says, enough of that, you lot. You're not coming through here. You know what I mean?
Can I add something on that, Clive? Because someone messaged me earlier on Twitter. Tor Jensen, I think is how you pronounce his name. And he says, from a Danish perspective, one of Norgaard's qualities that will benefit Arsenal is that he's an excellent substitute. He's won 18 out of his 35 Denmark caps coming from the bench, and he's frequently been able to change the game for us through dictating the tempo of the game. Yeah. So it's kind of exactly what you said.
I was exactly, Phil, controlling a game. There's 14 draws. I was going to have a chat with Scott about this to analyse those 14 draws, because that's a lot of what we're trying to fix here. Do you know what I mean? Because that's a lot of points. We only lost 4 games last year. Of those 4 games, we didn't. Some of those we didn't deserve to lose. Do you know what I mean? So 10 men, etc. So yeah, it's the draws we have to manage. And strikering and holding. You know what I mean? That's what we need to fix. So I'm comfortable with him. Well, also I was going to say, I'm not sure how much he plays for Denmark, but there's some big international breaks next year, and we've got some big players in our squad that have got some big games trying to get into World Cup squads, and they're going to be coming back from those international breaks, and we may have to have a different view on a Saturday morning, thank you BT Sport, for a game. Do you see what I mean? And suddenly someone who hasn't had big international minutes will be really valuable in that game.
That's a good point.
So we look at Zubimendi, Rodri's not at his best yet, quite rightly after an ACL. When Spain play, he's going to play. Do you know what I mean? And when we come back from those games, we're gonna need to look after him. Right? So back to it's a squad game. Don't stress too much. Just make sure they're all good enough. Because, what I don't want to have, mate, if I'm honest with you, Elliot, where I sit on the Emirates, I sit right where the subs warm up. And there's many a time I've seen 4 left backs falling up on that sideline. And that's not good, mate. It's not good. And Mika Marina at centre forward. So we're trying to fix this stuff, aren't we? So, yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I think I like this group that we built with Zubimendi and Norgaard. It is definitely a weird situation to go into where you don't have anyone to play central midfield who's played a minute of central midfield before for you going into a season. So we're going to learn a lot. One of the things that's kind of fun, just as a podcaster, speaking on behalf of all the podcasters listening, which is probably like 90% of the listeners at this point, given the number of Arsenal podcasts, but we've got a lot of new stuff to discuss this season. When the games actually kick off, when the ball starts rolling on the grass, we're going to have a new striker. We're probably going to have a new left wing and right wing and 2 new central midfielders. It's going to be exciting, until the first game we don't win, and then it'll be a crisis, and everyone needs to go. Okay, so let's get back to the rumor mill. Eze and Rodrigo. I love Eze. I think early in the window I was leaning more towards Rodrigo if it had to be one or the other, and the reason is he's younger. He's just 6 months older than Martinelli. By the way, in a previous pod I said he was younger than Martinelli. I got my June and January mixed up. Rodrigo born in January, Martinelli in June, so he's 6 months older than Martinelli. When he played off the left for Madrid, his metrics and his video, excellent. Rodrigo's coming off a down season, where he played off the right in a largely dysfunctional Madrid team, and some by their standards anyway, trying to integrate superstars in Mbappe and Jude and Vinny, and really taking a backseat to that. There are rumors that there are work ethic issues there, and I have to say, when a club hates a player, you start to wonder, why do they hate him so much? And no one hates anyone as much as Xabi Alonso hates Rodrigo. That's what I'm convinced of. He didn't get off the bench in the 3-0. I wound up being a 4-0 thrashing at the hands of PSG the other day. They were 3-0 down before I could even get the FOTMob app open, and they got thrashed. And he didn't get off the bench. And when asked whether it was related to his future, Xabi Alonso said, nope, just a technical decision. In other words, no, the player's just shit and I don't trust him. It has not been a good summer. The rumors now are they want him to go. Phil, I can't help it. Them hating him so much is leaking into my brain. Going into the summer, it was clear to me. Get the 24-year-old who's very, very talented, off a down season, but with the pedigree. We've done well with this with Ozil and Odegaard, and you get this guy, and he's going to come in with a lot to prove and play off the left where he's great, and he's just going to take us to the next level. But they hate him so much now. Now I'm like, well, I do love Eze. Do you have a strong lean?
They don't hate him. Neither do... It's the same with Chelsea and Madueke. They want him out the door because he's a sellable asset.
Can I just clarify one thing? Just one thing real quick.
Yes.
They absolutely straight hate the guy. They hate him with every fiber of their being. Please, carry on.
That's very Real Madrid online of you. So he's a sellable asset, and they're not going to sell Vinicius. They're not going to sell Mbappe. So who's the next guy in line? Unfortunately for Rodrigo, it's him, because they've got Arda Güler, they've got Franco Mastantuono, they've just signed Dean Howson, they're about to sign Alvaro Carreras from Benfica. So that's a big outlay. Could be up to 200.
They want to play on the right wing, Phil.
Exactly. So there's a lot of money there to recoup, and he's the obvious sale, right? So whether or not teams want to meet the reported 90 million price tag is one thing, but he is the clear candidate for sale, and I think there is a potential opportunity there for Arsenal or even City or Liverpool or whoever to come in and steal in. I still think he's an outstanding player, but if we do sign Madueke, for me, I don't see the need to have both of them. I see that unless we lose somebody. If we lose a Martinelli or a Trossard, then the dynamic changes. But if things stay as they are, plus a Madueke, I think it's more important to have the central threat that Eze offers, plus the wide threat that he offers as well.
See, Phil, when I was 20 and I bought my Volkswagen Jetta, I was like, there's no need for me to get the Ferrari because I have the Jetta now. So, it's the same thing. If you have Noni Madueke, what the hell do you need Rodrigo for?
Absolutely. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. I think Eze offers us a little bit something special in central areas, that ability to carry the ball. I think he takes shots. I think he's a little bit different to a Declan Rice or Mikel Merino who normally typically play in the number 8 position. He plays it differently to Odegaard as well, who's a lot more close space, 1-2, scooped passes over the top, whereas Eze is a lot more, I'm going to run through you, kind of Morgan Rogers style and whack shots, basically. So I just think his profile is more exciting and different for us, whereas Rodrigo, if we signed him, it would just be another really good wide player who can play on both sides, scores a few goals, but do we need another one without sales? I just don't think so.
Clive, did you see how he handled that? So he saw my facial expression. He saw there's a dumb joke coming. I'm going to pause. I'll let Elliot say whatever ridiculous shit he's got teed up, and then I'll go back to the serious analysis. It was just so smooth and so well handled. Thank you. I would have taken...
It's not my first time on this podcast.
A pity laugh.
Yeah.
I would have taken a pity laugh, but it's fine. It's not like my ego's at stake here. Clive, how about that? Do you agree with what Phil has said? I mean, I love Eze. I have to admit, if we got him, I'd be super fascinated to see what the domino effects are of where he plays. Does he just become a left-wing option? Does he sometimes play left 8 and Rice moves back, or Rice moves over, or Odegaard comes out? There's so many interesting possible ways you'd use an Eze, unless we're just galaxy braining it and he'd be converted to a left wide forward, which he's done for England as well, by the way. So what do you think of Phil's points and where an Eze might fit in versus the more natural, I'd say, fit of Rodrigo at left wing?
Yeah, I think he's a harder fit for us, but actually turn that around. Maybe that's what we need. If we have the others that have those positions sorted out, we have sprinters in wide areas on both sides, and Martinelli stays, which I'd really hope he does stay. I think the Trossard Eze thing, I link that in my mind, if I'm honest with you. I link that sort of player, that sort of more creative wide man who can drop inside into a 10, second striker type thing. So I have those two linked. But I think Eze, I said to you earlier this week, Elliot, I think it would be a nice present to the fans, that signing, to bring some joy back to the timelines, shall we say. To see somebody who obviously wants to be here, would suit our club down to the ground. It's the right time in his career. He's done his job for Palace. They've won their first trophy in their history. He scored the winning goals all the way through to the final almost, it felt like. Beautiful story. I want to see it happen. I almost don't care about tactical fit. The emotional fit is perfect. And last time I looked, when I'm sitting down stadiums and I'm 3 pints deep, it's the emotions I care about and the players on the pitch and what they can do for me and how I feel about them. You know, I just want him to be there and we'll work it out later. I don't want him to cost anybody. I want to make sure Ethan feels confident that he's going to get playing time. That's really important. You spend 10 years developing that player, not to just fancy a 27-year-old and then stop his career. I want to make sure that he has room to develop. That means he's got to be a left-hand side or a number 10 option on occasions, whether start or finishing at games. And we just had a season of watching our skipper have a really tough year. A really tough year. And what did it cost us? It cost us quite a lot. Where people were saying we've lost central creativity, we don't fill those spaces, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to listen to that and then say, well, let's do nothing about that then, shall we? Or should we get somebody that travels into those areas, receives the ball, got really strong body to roll off people and bang shots? Yeah, mate, where do I sign up for that? Don't know where he's going to play, don't care. It's how he connects to other players. Is he on their IQ level? I absolutely believe he is. You know, and he'll only benefit us. And I don't like looking back in my football, but a lot of us remember 2008 Arsenal with lots of creative number 8s, so number 10s in our team. And that team didn't win anything, but we all remember it because it's beautiful to watch, and that's what the game is. All right, so let's get back to that.
Can I stay with you, Clive, for just 1 second and ask a question that I hope people don't regard this as like me worrying, because I don't do that. What? Why the laughter? But I think it's at least worth asking, is there any aspect of the Eze links that would lead you to think there are some lingering, even minor concerns about Odegaard, either his physical recovery or returning to the level of the prior couple of seasons? Because look, Odegaard was rightly named as and considered one of the best players in the Premier League, full stop, the season before last. This past season, when he came back from injury, he never hit the level. I think he was improving a bit, but he never hit the level that we know he had in him. And I just wonder if the Eze links could be almost an insurance policy against any concern that Odegaard might struggle to return to that level. Do you think there's any of that here, or is that just putting 2 and 2 together, getting 22?
Probably, yeah. And it's what we do, right? Isn't it? We worry about things, and
well, I do.
Yeah, and I just want to see us push each other. You know, I want to see us on a podcast pre a game trying to pick the 11 and we can't pick it, and we're arguing about the last game that we saw that went so well, and a player came on and scored 2 goals. Is he going to start the next game? I don't want to be worrying about if Mikel Merino is fit enough to play a game of football up front. Because that's not fair on him, and that's not where we should be. I don't really want to be seeing Kieran Tierney come on against Real Madrid in the Champions League quarter-final as a left winger. You know, this is the stuff I need to fix in my head. You know, and then that's my priority. And you know what? We're an elite football club playing at the elite competition in the world. In the Champions League last year, we came 3rd out of 36, so we're right at the top there. We got to the semi-final. We're the best 4 teams in Europe and basically out-XG the winners that everyone's eulogizing over. But we didn't have enough firepower, didn't have enough in our locker. And so you have to look at that and say, I don't really care anymore about somebody. I need to create competition and a competitive nature at the top end of this pitch because everyone wants to be here. I saw the Christian Norgaard interview today, and he's 31, and his chief executive spoke about him, said he deserves this move. He deserves a chance to go and win trophies. We're so focused about the top 4 and where we are. There's a whole professional game trying to get to this top end level. And even at 31, he's arrived here at the elite level. I'm so pleased for him. He can have a chance to compete. He cares about his minutes. He's right there, turning up on our coach, with our people, with our fans. Much bigger entity, travelling around Europe, Champions League music. Mate, that's what everybody wants. Right? And if they're not going to play well, then they won't play. But last year, we couldn't say that. Didn't play well. We're just hoping they'll be okay on Saturday. Do you see what I mean? We need to fix. That's what we're trying to fix, Elliot. I'm really adamant about this. We just need to change our mindsets. You know, it's a different game now. It really is.
Any quick words to add back to that, Phil, before we go to our last quick question I have for you here?
Not really. I think that was it. It was a really nice interview, actually. If you haven't seen it, anybody listening, it was really good. He spoke really well, and he said it was a dream come true to be at Arsenal. So I think you can't underestimate the power of wanting to be somewhere, because I think that can give you an extra 5 or 10% when maybe your expectations of people might not be so high. So
yeah. One thing, Phil, I wanted to ask you about is Saka's role. Maybe I'm squinting to see it, but last season, towards the end, Saka seemed like he was occupying some more central locations than we've seen before.
Yep.
And I just sort of wonder if we might see Mikel play with that at times, and if Madueke comes in, could you see Saka and Madueke at times play together where Saka does start to take a full-time role as a more central player? I'll confess, I actually don't see that and don't even necessarily like that, because I think it means he has to work even harder at times and do a role that doesn't just let him get the ball and beat a man and influence the game in the final third. But it's a question that I've seen out there. You know, could Saka start to occupy more central locations? Could he move inside? Do you think that's something that could happen?
What I hope is that we provide him with enough support and we put enough threat in the team to get him off the touchline, away from 4 defenders who are constantly around him. Because I think you're right, we did see it towards the end of the year last year, popping up around the edge of the area. I mean, we all remember that Real Madrid game, the Declan Rice free kicks. How did he win the first one? You know, he came inside off the left back, drove into the central space, and they were worried. They were scared, so they fouled him. I think it was David Alaba who fouled him. You know, he is so dangerous in any area of the pitch. And actually, when he first broke through, my initial thought about his ceiling was that he would be a kind of Angel Di Maria style number 8. I don't know if you remember how he played for Carlo Ancelotti in 2014 in that kind of box-to-box role. I really saw him...
He's a little too young, but tell me.
It happens, man. Don't worry about it.
I could tell you. I could tell you.
Yeah. So that's what he reminded me of, and I thought he would end up being somebody like that. But now I just think his game is so polished on the wing that he will primarily be occupying those areas with the typical Ben White overlaps, with the Odegaard link coming close to him. But of course, if we're against the deep block at home, in need of a goal, why can't he come off the touchline? Why can't he be on the edge of the area? You know, I think he's got more than enough capability to link, to shoot, to pull players away from him, which could free others as well in a different moment. But I don't think he'll be starting centrally, no.
Clive, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, the day Saka gets into a 10, I think it'd be wonderful. I just don't think we need to do it in our current group, with a current construct. You've got players queuing up in that area. That's maybe a reason why Ethan's not signed yet, you know. We're about to buy a centre forward. What's Kai's second best position? Right, it's probably right in that slot. And the third best position is on the other side where Declan Rice is playing. So that's a worry, because it's a senior player in the group. And so, again, it's all about the options, isn't it? And the game, when you're there and you're watching a game, it's quite clear what you need to change. And the biggest fear you have is when you turn around and it is Nathan Butler or Deji, and you can't change it. You know, that's the biggest fear. Not the fear of, I wonder if they could all fit in. I honestly don't care, right? I don't care, because what I do care about is watching loads of different TV shows saying Arsenal are always going to come second, Netflix FC, blah, blah, blah. If I'm anyone near the club, I'm thinking, we need to fix this shit. We need to sort this out and at least give us the tools to achieve and not hold back a little bit. And I think we did last year, maybe good reason for it. PSR-wise, etc. But if you're going to show that sort of fiscal discipline in January and in the summer, that's another story. If you're going to do that, then come the moment in the summer, do your work. And it seems as though we're doing that.
My biggest fear when I turn around is that there's a giant spider behind me. I think we should leave it there. I don't know that there's much else to cover today, and it is one of these things. I'm always nervous that I'm going to hit stop record. I'm going to open up a browser and see Arsenal have signed this random player we didn't even know we were linked with.
If only there was another way for you to talk about transfers, Elliot.
Well, there will be a transfer daily coming later today. You're not going to want to miss it. And tomorrow, Friday Night Clive will have a special celebrity guest appearance. You're not going to want to miss that. So come join us. come be with us. We want to be with you. Come be with us. And then we can be together. It'd be a beautiful thing because we love you. Phil, love you. Thanks for being on.
Maybe the real Madueke was the pods we made along the way. Yeah, that's it.
Check Phil out on the Football Vision podcast where you'll get more of that kind of stuff. And Football Vision is doing their own transfer stuff, but they're doing, get this, look, I'm not saying I get it, but they're doing analysis instead of whatever the hell I do on the Transfer Daily is. Clive, always a pleasure, my friend. Talk to you tomorrow on Friday Night Clive.
Thank you very much.
Friday Night Clive, starring Clive. Okay, my name's Elliot Smith. Block me everywhere. I love you people. You're just the best people. The prettiest, most handsome, youngest, virile, intelligent people. And we just generally appreciate you and want good things for you. Which means Eze and Rodrigo. Noni out. I'm kidding. We love you. And we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10. Transfer window now.